He was already inside me, buried deep, his whole body trembling as he moved. Not fast, not rough, just slow, steady, deliberate, like he didn't know if he had the right to keep going, but couldn't make himself stop. His hands pressed into the mattress beside my shoulders, arms shaking, breath caught in his throat. I felt every inch of him, felt the weight of what we were doing, and still I pulled him closer. My legs wrapped tighter around his hips, my fingers digging into his back, pulling him deeper as he groaned low against my skin. I didn't ask him to stop. I didn't want him to. His forehead rested against mine, our breath tangled in the space between. His lips brushed my jaw when he whispered, "You don't know what this is doing to me." But I did. I knew exactly what it was doing. I just didn't care anymore, because I wanted it too badly. I never imagined I'd cross this line. Not with him. Not with David, my best friend's ex-husband. A man I'd known for nearly 20 years, who used to sit across from me at dinner tables and backyard barbecues, whose arm once draped over the shoulders of a woman I loved like a sister. And now he was here, inside me, shaking, and I was taking advantage of every inch of it. I'm 41, single, divorced, no kids. Most days I'm content with that. Most days I tell myself I made peace with being alone. I keep my house clean, my wine stocked, my dating apps deleted. I volunteer at the library. I text back late. I pretend I don't notice the quiet. But David, he made me notice everything again. It started with a favor. Melanie, my best friend since college, asked if he could stop by to pick up a box of her things I'd been storing since their split. She didn't want to see him, said it was easier if I handled it, said it was just a box. I should have said no. But I didn't. He showed up at my door, looking tired, older than I remembered, but somehow more real than he ever did when he was with her. His hair was a little longer, his eyes softer. He smiled like he wasn't sure he had the right to. We talked. It was supposed to be 5 minutes, but 5 turned into a glass of wine, then 2, then 3. We didn't mention Melanie much, just skirted around her name like it stung both of us for different reasons. That night, nothing happened, but the shift was there. I felt it in how he looked at me when I laughed, in how his knees stayed close to mine on the couch, in how I caught myself brushing my hair before opening the door. He came by again a few days later, claimed he left a charger. I knew he hadn't, but I let him in anyway. This time we didn't sit far apart. This time our arms touched. This time the silence between us wasn't awkward, it was thick-charged, waiting for something to snap, and it did. He kissed me. Soft. Careful, like he was testing whether I'd let him. I did. He pulled back like he was about to apologize, but I leaned in and kissed him harder. My hand found the back of his neck. His fingers tightened around my waist. His breath hitched like he couldn't believe what was happening. Neither could I. We didn't make it to the bedroom that night, but the next time, we did. And now his body is pressed into mine, his hips moving with a rhythm that feels desperate and uncertain all at once. Every time he sinks deeper, he shudders. His lips part, like he's trying to breathe through the guilt, but it's tangled up with the want. I arch toward him, my skin burning from how closely we're pressed together. My heart's pounding so hard, it drowns out every voice telling me this is wrong. His name slips from my lips, not as a question, but as a need. He exhales, shaky, barely holding it together. "I shouldn't be doing this," he murmurs, his voice cracked and raw. "Then don't stop," I breathe back. His mouth finds mine again, desperate and open, his body pressing deeper, as if to answer me without words. And in that moment, I know, this isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A selfish, hungry, irreversible choice. When we finally stop moving, his chest still heaving, he doesn't pull away. He stays inside me, resting his weight on my body like he doesn't want to let go. Like letting go means facing what we just did. I stare up at the ceiling, heart-hammering breath, shaky skin, still tingling from where he touched me. My thighs ache, my lips are swollen. And I already know this isn't the end, because now that we've crossed this line, I won't pretend I don't want to cross it again. And if you're still here, still listening, then maybe part of you understands what it's like to crave something you're not supposed to have. Maybe you've stood at the edge of a decision and stepped forward anyway. So stay with me, because this story, it only gets more dangerous from here. And if you want to hear more true confessions like mine, the kind most people are too afraid to admit, then like this video, subscribe, and keep watching, because I'm not done telling the truth. It's strange how quickly you can get used to doing something you once swore you never would. After that night, I thought I'd feel disgusted with myself. I thought I'd cry in the shower or stare in the mirror and not recognize the woman looking back at me. But that didn't happen. What happened was this. I started waiting for him. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I'd move a few things around the living room, set a second wine glass out on the counter without thinking, clean my sheets a little earlier in the week, wear softer clothes that felt good against my skin. He didn't come over every day. Sometimes it was a full week between visits, but when he did, it always felt like something more than a casual drop-in. He never stayed long. An hour, maybe 2, but it was enough. Enough to stir something I'd buried years ago. Something lonely and hungry, and still very much alive. David wasn't charming the way younger men tried to be. He wasn't slick. He didn't flatter me with lines or compliments. He was quiet, thoughtful. He asked how I was doing, and actually listened when I answered. And that undid me. You spend enough years being invisible, especially after 40, and the smallest bit of attention feels like sunlight on a house that's been boarded up too long. I didn't realize how much I missed being looked at, not glanced at, not tolerated, seen. David saw me, and I don't think he even meant to. Melanie used to say he was too distant, too practical. She wanted someone who'd sweep her off her feet. Someone spontaneous and romantic and loud. David wasn't any of those things, but he remembered the little stuff. He brought her favorite coffee without asking, noticed when her car tires were low, picked out the birthday cards that actually meant something. I used to think she didn't appreciate that. Now I realize I did. One afternoon he came by to drop off an old cookbook she'd forgotten. I opened the door and he was just standing there, holding it like a peace offering. She probably doesn't want it, I said. I know, he replied, but I thought you might. I blinked. Me? You used to talk about this one. That pasta you made, what was it called? Tagliatelle with lemon cream. He nodded. That one. It was good. I hadn't made that dish in years. I took the book from his hands and felt my fingers brush his. He didn't pull away. That night I cooked it, and when I sat down to eat I texted him, "You should have stayed. Would have been better with company." He didn't reply right away. I didn't expect him to, but 20 minutes later he rang my doorbell. He ate with me. Quiet. Grateful. Said nothing about the last time we'd seen each other, but everything about the way he looked at me said he hadn't stopped thinking about it either. After dinner, we didn't touch. He helped me wash dishes, dried his hands on a towel, then stood too close behind me as I poured another glass of wine. "I've been thinking about that night," he said, voice low. I held the glass without drinking. "So have I. I didn't mean for it to happen. I know, but I haven't stopped wanting it since." I turned around. His eyes met mine, and in that split second, I felt my whole body tense with the need to close the space between us. But I didn't. Not yet. He stepped forward first. He didn't kiss me. He just brushed his knuckles down my arm. Light. Hesitant. like he was waiting for me to tell him to go. I didn't. That kind of tension, that breath before the drop feeling, became our pattern. We never said what we were doing, never called it anything. But he kept coming back, and I kept letting him in. I told myself it wasn't real, that it didn't count if we weren't defining it, that I wasn't betraying Melanie if it stayed quiet, private, unnamed. But I was lying, to her, to him, to myself. The truth is, I liked it. I liked the guilt, the secrecy, the way it made me feel raw and alive in a life that had gotten too clean, too orderly. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted, to have a man lean in just to smell your neck like your skin held some kind of answer he couldn't put into words, to have someone watch you cook and then pull you close just because he couldn't not touch you anymore. That kind of attention makes you forget boundaries, morals, history. I started remembering things I hadn't let myself think about in years, how long it had been since someone undressed me slowly, how long since I let anyone hear the way I sound when I fall apart. David never asked about other men. I never asked if he was seeing anyone. We both knew that kind of honesty might break whatever fragile world we'd created, and I wasn't ready to give it up. Not when he made me feel like this. It was the way he hovered, not like someone invading space, but like someone checking if he was still allowed in it. David never pushed, never demanded, but he lingered. That was worse. It gave me room to want him back. After the pasta night, the visits kept happening. Some with a reason, returning a tool, checking a leak in the laundry room I hadn't mentioned. Some without. He'd text something vague like, "You around?" and I'd say yes, even if I wasn't rearranging my whole afternoon just to see him. He'd knock. I'd open the door. And there it was again, that silent pull between us. One Saturday he came over with a toolbox. "I owe you a working faucet," he said, nodding toward my kitchen. I hadn't even complained about the drip, but he remembered the one time I mentioned it. He knelt down, the cabinet doors wide open, his body stretched underneath the sink. I stood behind him barefoot on the cold tile arms, folded, not because I was cold, but because I didn't know what to do with the way I was staring at his back, the curve of his shoulders, under that fitted t-shirt. I watched the way his jeans slid low when he leaned forward. I watched the way his arm flexed when he reached for the wrench. He cursed softly when the pipe refused to budge. "You okay down there?" I asked, my voice thinner than usual. "Yeah," he said, voice muffled. "Just stubborn, like someone else I know." I smirked. "Cute." He chuckled, then slid out from under the cabinet, lying flat on his back for a second before sitting up. Our eyes met. He was right at my feet, kneeling, head tilted up. "Got any paper towels?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, walked past him. When I handed them over, our fingers touched, and neither of us moved. He didn't stand up right away. He just sat there, still on his knees, still looking up at me. And for a long, charged second I wanted to pull him up by the shirt and press my mouth to his. But I didn't. We didn't. Instead, I stepped back. He wiped his hands, said "all fixed," and smiled like he hadn't just set my entire body on fire with a glance. That became our rhythm. Almosts. Touches that lasted a second too long. His hand on my lower back as I walked past him in the hallway, my legs brushing against his under the table when we both reached for the same dish. His eyes locked on my mouth when I laughed a little too hard at something he said. He'd bring groceries sometimes. "Figured you hadn't eaten," he'd say, holding up a paper bag with that easy, guilty grin of his. I didn't ask who taught him to notice hunger in a woman. One night it rained. He came in soaked shirt, clinging to him, hair dripping. I handed him a towel and told him to take his shirt off. I said it like a joke. He didn't laugh. He peeled it off slowly, exposing the chest I'd already memorized in pieces under fabric, in flashes in dark rooms with barely enough light to justify my staring. I swallowed hard. Do you want to dry it? He raised an eyebrow. The shirt. Yeah, I said too quickly. The shirt. We didn't talk much that night. We just sat on the couch, a blanket between us, like a sad little barrier we both pretended not to notice. He rested his head back, closed his eyes. I turned the TV on for noise not content. Then I felt his hand under the blanket, brushing the side of my thigh. He wasn't trying anything, just resting. Still. I didn't move away. My heart raced so loud I thought he could hear it. His fingers stayed where they were, light, warm, a reminder. We never said what we were doing, but we both knew what it was. It wasn't love, at least not the kind that makes sense in daylight. It was attention, heat, need, and maybe something worse. Connection. One night I came back from a terrible date. Some bland, clean-cut man I met through a coworker. All small talk and hollow compliments. No depth, no spark. David was already on my porch when I pulled into the driveway. He stood when I got out of the car. You okay? He asked. I didn't answer, just walked past him into the house. He followed. Quiet. Close. I poured myself a drink. Didn't offer him one. He leaned against the counter and asked, "Bad night?" "Empty," I said. You ever go out with someone and realize within 10 minutes you'd rather be alone? Yeah, he said. Too many times. I turned toward him. You ever feel like you're just pretending through half the things you're supposed to want, all the time? We stared at each other. No smiles, no teasing, just silence, breath close. He took a step forward. I didn't move. His hand lifted fingers, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. His thumb grazed my cheek, and my entire body locked up, like it didn't know if it was ready or starving. Say it, he whispered. Say what, that you want this too, so I can stop pretending I don't. I blinked. My mouth opened. Nothing came out, because I did, but I was still trying to convince myself I didn't. He leaned in slowly. Our lips were almost touching, and then I stepped back. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. For one more bite. He came over late, later than usual. I hadn't expected him. I was in bed already wearing a soft sleep shirt and nothing underneath. My hair was messy, no makeup. A movie paused on the TV. I almost didn't answer the door when he knocked. But I did. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, shoulders tense, like he'd spent the whole drive convincing himself not to turn around. He didn't say much, just, I was in the neighborhood. He wasn't. But I stepped aside anyway. He followed me into the living room. I sat on the couch. He stood for a minute, looking around like it wasn't the same house he'd been in a dozen times already. Then he walked over and sat next to me, closer than usual. Too close. I didn't ask what was wrong. I didn't need to. Something was brewing in his silence, simmering right beneath his skin. I could feel it radiating off him like heat. I'm tired, he said finally. Of what? Pretending this isn't real. He didn't look at me when he said it. He stared straight ahead. Like saying it out loud made it too dangerous to meet my eyes. I didn't speak, because I wasn't pretending anymore. I was fully in it. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I met you first? He asked quietly. I felt my breath catch. You shouldn't say that. I know, he said, voice flat. But I do. He turned then, slowly. His eyes met mine, and that was it. The final crack. Everything we'd been holding back unraveled in that single moment. I leaned forward first. My hand found his jaw. His lips met mine before I could think. This kiss wasn't hesitant. It was desperate. All heat and teeth and breathless pressure, like we'd both run out of time, and couldn't afford restraint anymore. He pulled me onto his lap, my legs straddling him, and the way his hands grabbed at my thighs, rough kneading made my head swim. My sleep shirt slid up around my waist as his fingers moved underneath, tracing my skin, like he was trying to memorize every inch. He looked up at me, breath ragged, and said nothing. Just held me there, forehead to forehead, until I rocked forward, pressing myself against him in a rhythm that made us both shake. Jesus, he whispered. I reached down between us, undid his jeans, and felt him tremble beneath my fingers. There was nothing graceful about it. I guided him inside me slowly, and the sound he made, half gasp, half groan, cut through me like heat. He was thick, the stretch deliberate, and I took all of him without hesitating. My hands held his shoulders. As I slid down fully seated, deep our breath tangled between us. His hands gripped my hips, unsure if he should move. But I did. Slowly at first. Just enough to feel the glide, the pressure, the burn. His hands flexed tighter. He buried his face in my chest, and his voice cracked against my skin. I can't stop, he said. I know I whispered. Don't. He moved with me then. Our bodies rocked together, heat building fast, and each time I lowered myself back onto him, I felt him deeper, shaking more. I pressed my forehead to his sweat, slipping between us, his mouth grazing mine with every ragged breath. We didn't speak again. We didn't need to. The room was silent except for the creak of the couch, the hitch of my breath, the soft grunt that escaped him every time I tightened around him. My back arched. His hands found the small of it. Our mouths opened against each other's necks, too winded to kiss, too desperate to stop. I didn't hold back. I chased every bit of sensation, every wave of heat and friction and need that pulsed between us. And when I started to fall apart, body clenching, voice breaking, he held me closer, buried himself, as deep as he could go, and groaned my name like it cost him something. After I didn't move, I stayed straddled over him, arms around his neck, my heartbeat slamming against his chest. His hands rested on my hips, like he couldn't believe what we'd done. Like if he let go, it would disappear. I pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was flushed, his jaw tight, his eyes wild and glassy. I'm not sorry, I said. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He just pressed his forehead to mine, closed his eyes and whispered, Neither am I. I slid off him slowly, already aching, already knowing we'd gone too far to go back. We sat on the couch in silence, side by side, breathing. I could feel him still pulsing between my thighs, the evidence of us everywhere. On my skin, on my lips, inside me. I reached for the blanket and pulled it over both of us, and we just sat there. No TV, no music, just guilt, waiting for one of us to look it in the eye. But neither of us moved, because even though we knew the fallout was coming, we'd never be the same again. The next morning, I found one of his socks under my coffee table. He'd left some time before dawn. I'd woken up alone on the couch, the blanket still draped over my body, my thighs still aching, my skin still warm from where he touched me. There was no note, no message, just that single sock folded halfway beneath the leg of the couch, like it had been hiding from the truth too. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I picked it up, pressed it to my chest, and sat on the floor for a full 10 minutes before I could breathe normally again. That was the start of the unraveling. Quiet, subtle. I started moving differently in my own home, keeping blinds half closed even during the day, checking the driveway twice before opening the door, washing sheets more often than I needed to, as if scrubbing away the scent could undo what had already been done. But nothing helped, because the worst of it didn't live on my skin, it lived in my head, and my body wanted it again. That week he didn't text. I kept glancing at my phone even in the middle of Zoom calls. I'd start to type something, then delete it. I didn't want to chase him. I didn't want to seem desperate. But I was. Not just for him. For the feeling. The feeling of being needed. Held. Seen. It wasn't love. I didn't even know if it was affection. But it was hunger. And I'd tasted it now. On Thursday he called. Not texted. Called. I stared at the screen until it almost went to voicemail, then picked up. "Hey," I said, voice tight. He didn't say hi. I've been trying to figure out what to say. About what? About us. I sat down at the edge of the bed. "There's an us now." His silence was the answer. Finally he said, "I don't regret it." I exhaled. "Me either. But I'm scared." "Of what?" He paused. "Mel." I bit the inside of my cheek. "I haven't told her anything." "I know. But she'll know, eventually. She hasn't called me in over a month." "You think she still cares what I do?" "She doesn't have to care. She just has to find out." I didn't say anything. Neither did he. He came over that night. Not like before. No excuse. No pretense. He knocked, and when I opened the door, he just stepped in and kissed me. Hard. No build-up. No hesitation. We barely made it to the bedroom. Clothes came off in a trail from the entryway to the hall. I tripped on my own jeans. He laughed low and breathless, but his eyes were full of something heavier. When he entered me, it was with urgency. Heat. Like he was trying to burn the fear out of both of us. His hands were rougher this time, gripping my hips. His mouth open against my shoulder. His voice cracking as he moved faster, deeper. We didn't talk after. We just laid there, skin-slick chests rising and falling together. That's when I heard the knock. Not on the door. On the window. My blood ran cold. He sat up fast, grabbing for his jeans. I yanked the sheet around me and crept toward the living room window. My heart beat in my throat as I peeked through the slat in the blinds. It was my neighbor, Mr. Halverson, 73, insomniac, always walking his damn dog past midnight. He squinted, then waved. Just a wave. But it was enough to make my whole body flush with heat, not the good kind. When I came back to the bedroom, David was already half-dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed like someone waiting for a verdict. "I can't keep sneaking around," he said quietly. I sat down next to him. "So don't. We're lying." "I know. If this gets out..." I turned to him. "Then what Mel throws a fit. She cuts me off. She already left you. She's moved on. She'll still find a way to make this ugly." "Do you want to stop?" I asked. He didn't answer. So I leaned in, resting my forehead against his. Because I don't. I keep telling myself it's just physical, he said. But it's not. I felt my stomach clench. "It's you," he whispered. "It's been you for a while." And that was the most terrifying thing he could have said. Because now it wasn't just lust. It was emotional. It was dangerous. I pulled away. Stood. Wrapped the sheet around me tighter. He watched me like he wanted to take it back, but he didn't. I looked at the clock. It was past 1 a.m. "You should go," I said softly. He nodded, stood up, buttoned his shirt. At the door, he paused. "Say it." "Say what?" "That you want this too." I swallowed hard. "I want this too," I said. "But we can't keep doing this. Someone's going to find out." It didn't happen the way I thought it would. No explosion. No screaming phone call. No sudden betrayal. It started with a text from Melanie. Simple. Out of nowhere. "Coffee next week. Need your eyes on a fundraiser invite." My fingers hovered over the screen. It had been 6 weeks since we'd spoken. No reason, just life drifting, or so I told myself. Now I knew she hadn't felt the shift yet. Not really. I replied, "Sure. Just tell me when." That night David didn't come over. He hadn't in a few days. Said work was getting heavy. Said he needed time to think. I knew that meant something was shifting inside him too, but I didn't ask. I didn't want to make it real. We met at our usual spot, some indie cafe we'd been going to for years. She looked good. Lighter. Hair a little shorter. Cheeks flushed with something new. I waited for her to bring him up. She didn't. Instead, she talked about work. Her new boyfriend, Will. Some startup guy. Different from David, she said, with a small smirk. Looser, she added in a good way. I smiled through it. The guilt didn't hit me in the way I expected. It didn't claw. It didn't tighten my throat. It just sat in my stomach cold and heavy, like a stone that had always been there. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, suddenly stirring her latte. "Is David okay?" He's been, quiet. He didn't respond to the last email about the storage stuff. I kept my voice level. "We've talked a little." She raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I nodded. He came by for a few things. We didn't get into much. She sipped her drink, watching me. I changed the subject. Later that night, David finally texted, "I can't do this anymore." That was all it said. No punctuation. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time, sitting in bed, the blue light of the screen turning my face into something pale and hollow. I typed and deleted half a dozen replies. Then I wrote, "K," because what else was there to say? He didn't answer. 3 days passed. Then I saw him, by accident, at the hardware store, of all places. He was coming out with a pack of screws and a long piece of molding under one arm. We both froze. He looked thinner, like he hadn't been sleeping. I opened my mouth. He walked past me without a word. Not angry, not cold, just gone. Like we'd never happened. That night I stood in the shower for nearly an hour, not crying, just letting the water beat against me until I didn't feel anything, and I told myself I should be angry. He used me. He left. He made me break every rule I'd lived by for 2 decades and then walked away like it didn't happen. But I wasn't angry, because I understood. He left because he had to save what was left of himself, to protect me from what we'd already ruined. I never told Melanie. She never asked. We drifted again. Naturally this time. I don't think she'll ever know, or maybe deep down she already suspects. Women like her always do, but she won't say it. That's her power, pretending not to see what's right in front of her. A month later, I found the sock again. I'd buried it in the back of a drawer under a pile of scarves I hadn't worn in years. I held it to my chest, inhaled. It didn't smell like him anymore. But I remembered. The weight of him above me, the way his breath trembled, the sound he made when he moved too deep and still didn't pull back. The look in his eyes when he said my name like it hurt. No one ever said my name like that before, and I know no one will again. I put the sock back in the drawer. Didn't throw it away, didn't need to, because that part of me, the one that opened her body and her soul to someone she never should have touched, is buried too. Not erased, just folded away. I live my life now like it never happened. Dinner with coworkers, late-night TV, grocery runs where I pretend not to glance at his car in passing. But some nights when it's too quiet, when the house hums with silence, and I can feel the weight of my own choices pressing against my chest, I close my eyes and replay that night. His body, my breath, that moment when we stopped pretending, and I tell myself the truth. I crossed a line I can't uncross. But for one night, I felt like a woman again.